Morning, everyone. Morning. It's an honor to be here. As Carl mentioned, my name's Claire, and I'm the CEO of Know Your Company. We're a software tool that helps CEOs and business owners get to know their employees better and overcome company growing pains by getting ongoing employee feedback. And we get to work with some amazing companies like Airbnb and Kickstarter, actually over 15,000 employees in 25 countries, as well as a lot of the really incredible folks in this room. As Carl mentioned, I've been to maybe 6 owner camps. This is my 4th owner summit, and I'm so grateful to be a part of this community and to kick things off this morning. So I was curious if any of you have ever found yourself thinking this: if only I were an employee, everything would be easier. I could go home at 5 and not have to think about how I'm about to let this person go. I'm not going to have to wrestle with this difficult client. Oh my gosh, employees, they've got it so easy. The grass is definitely greener for employees. On the flip side, over the past 4.5 years, in working with thousands of employees in the workshops that we run internationally, I've heard this: if only I were an owner, oh my gosh, then everything would be better. I'd know exactly what I'd change. I'd know exactly what I'd fix. Owners, they get to make the call. It's so good when you're an owner. The grass is definitely greener when you're an owner. Does it sound familiar? Saw even a few raised hands in the back. Well, that's because it is. This concept that the grass is always greener is something that I've heard over the past 4.5 years in the research that we've done with the 15,000 employees and owners across the workshops and the talks that we run across the world. It's something we hear over and over again, that if I'm an owner, those employees, they don't know how good they have it. And, if I'm an employee owners, their gig is so much better. But today, what I want to talk about is how this concept that the grass is always greener is, in fact, dangerous. And not only dangerous, it's actually wrong. And that there are some serious myths that we harbor of our employees and that our employees actually have of us. So I'm going to talk about specifically what are the biggest myths that our team right now, as we're sitting in this room, are thinking. What are the biggest myths that we also, unfortunately, have of our team? I'm going to talk about, what can we do about them if they are, in fact, myths? How can we let go of this perspective that the grass is always greener? And most importantly, when we do this, when we can shed the myths that we have of our team and them of us, how can we actually build a more enjoyable, whole lot less stressful, and more productive workplace? So, first, for employees, what are these myths? Why are they thinking we've got it so good? Well, the first myth that we've encountered, the biggest by far, through the research that we found across these past 4.5 years, is employees don't think we care about them. I know this in many ways because I've felt this myself personally. About 6.5, 7 years ago, before I was CEO of Know Your Company, I was just an employee. I worked at an early stage e-commerce startup, and when I was there, we had a policy in the office that if you wanted to take vacation, you needed to send an email to the CEO. We're a small company. So a few months out, I decided to send my CEO an email, let him know I wanted to take vacation, and I didn't hear anything. So a few weeks go by, I decided to send him another note, and I still didn't hear anything. I ended up sending 5 or 6 emails before I finally got a response. And I remember thinking, oh gosh, 6 emails to be able to go on vacation? I can't believe this. There's no way that our CEO cares about me. This is what I thought. And as frustrated as I was, and as maybe true as that moment felt to me, there's something that I did not consider, which is that even though my CEO didn't respond to my email right away, it's highly likely that he did care about me and that he was actually thinking about me and the rest of the team all the time. I'm sure many of you can relate. I'm sure a lot of you are thinking, yeah, this is actually what keeps me up at night. I'm thinking about my team all the time. Perhaps many of you, even last night, had conversations with folks, over the happy hour of, hey, these are some of the people-related issues that I'm struggling with and trying to just make sure that I'm on top of. And studies have shown that for CEOs, this is the number one thing that's on their mind. So it's not that we don't care about employees. Again, I'm sure a lot of you are like, yeah, no, Claire, I care. Trust me, it's why I'm here at this conference. It's not that we don't care. It's that we don't always know how to show that we care. And what happens is when we get busy, and we're all busy, and then we get a little bit busier, we start to make little trade-offs. We justify in our minds, you know what, I can't respond to this email about vacation because I got to take care of this huge deal that we're about to close. Or, you know what, I can't answer the second email because, oh man, this really important client needs my face-to-face time. And we go in our heads and justify all the little things, all the trade-offs, because, yeah, we do care, right? But what we don't always realize is that these little trade-offs add up. And that instead what we should be thinking about is not justifying the little trade-offs, but thinking about what message they ultimately end up sending. So as leaders, to combat this myth that, oh, hey, my employees, they think I don't care, we can really zone in on the fact that our actions, they speak louder than anything we could say. That if my CEO had maybe answered that email a little bit earlier, would I really be thinking he doesn't care? And what effect does that small trade-off that he decided to make, what does that say about him? And for us, what do all of our small trade-offs that we tend to make, what does that say about us as leaders? Look at your actions in terms of revealing whether or not you're showing that you're caring and not just saying that you're caring. And one of my favorite ways to make sure that I'm doing this myself as a leader is to ask this question. What does it feel like to work for me? Which sometimes can be an uncomfortable question depending on how busy things are, how crazy things are. I understand. But again, if we are trying to let go of this myth that employees have of us that we don't care, this is a really good place to start. And again, if we can do this, man, does our culture become a whole lot easier and more enjoyable to work with. So again, it's not that we don't care, it's just we don't always show that we care. So how about the second biggest myth? What is it that employees are thinking about us that isn't necessarily true? Well, what we found in our research is that they think this. Owners don't get how bad things are. I had a conversation with a woman who works at a digital agency a few months ago, and she said, Claire, gosh, I'm just slammed, and my boss keeps giving me more work. They actually keep signing more clients. I'm at capacities. Everyone's at capacity. It's terrible. We're running around. It's so busy, so hectic. There's no way my owner understands how bad things are. And I understand how frustrating it must be for her, and as struggle, what that struggle might feel like for her. However, what she didn't consider is the fact that, well, we probably kind of do know how bad it is, right? All of us here in this room, most of us at least, we've been an employee before. For many of us, it's the reason why we decided to start our own firm. It's because we felt like I could be doing, a better job. I feel like I could be doing a better job. We know how bad it can get. And yet, when we're in that situation, what happens is sometimes we just feel like we don't have the power to change it, though. Things are busy because they have to be busy. You're worried about making payroll in the next 9 months, and you have to take on that extra work, and so what can you tell this person? You know how bad it is, but that's just kind of the way things need to be right now. The other thing for why this myth happens and why it seems that employees think we don't know how bad it is because actually a lot of us are disengaged in our work ourselves. So Gallup ran a really interesting study last year where they found that only 35% of managers are in fact engaged in their work. And for many of you, hopefully that's not the case, but maybe you've observed your business partner, not maybe performing at their highest level. Maybe you yourself have felt conflicted about not feeling as energized about the work that you're doing. That's natural, that's okay, but here's the thing, understand that your own personal level of engagement is going to affect your team too. And that may be the reason that your team's thinking, they don't know how bad it is. It's because you yourself might be disengaged. So given this, what can we do? How can we combat this myth that we don't know how bad it is? Well, we can say that we know how bad it is, right? We can level with our employees and admit, I understand that you have more work on your plate than you've ever had. I understand that some of these deadlines seem unreasonable given everything you've got going on. But in the midst of admitting all of that, find the one kernel of positivity, right? Find the one possible thing that can be a step forward. Whether that's seeing all this work and realizing, you know what? We're going to give you more responsibility, and so this is actually going to help your career growth. Or you're going to have access to learning this new skill or new programming language or new design thinking technique that you haven't before. And I know it's crazy right now. I know this is the busiest you've ever been. I know you're staying late at the office. But find that kernel, right? So that you don't feel powerless as a leader of feeling like, it's just bad, right? You get how bad things are and you found that kernel, that one thing you can do to move things forward. And then take a moment to step back and reflect. To what extent is your own level of engagement affecting how your employees are perceiving you? Is your own lack of energy or motivation on a certain project or relationship with a client the reason that you seem distant and the reason they seem to think that you just don't know how bad things are? And I guarantee you that if you're able to do this, if you're able to level with folks, if you're able to self-assess where your own level of engagement is at, that your team, they're not going to be griping as much. They're not going to feel as demoralized. They're going to feel a whole lot less frustrated. So it's not that, we don't get how bad things are. It's just that we don't always know what to do about it. And we may be, in fact, disengaged ourselves. The third biggest myth that we found that our employees have of us is they think we don't always know what we're doing, which is kind of true, I think. At least I personally feel that way a lot of times. And it's interesting, the sentiment actually comes up over and over again in all the owner camps and owner summits I've been to. Someone kind of whispers to themselves, like, do you feel like you know what you're doing? No, that's why I'm here. It's like, okay, phew, right? So this may be somewhat true, but the truth and the reality of all of this is that leadership is unnatural. That as much as our society likes to think you come born out of the womb, an Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos or whoever, Steve Jobs, it's not the case. You're not born with leadership skills. Very, very few people actually have that innate ability. And in fact, that most managers and owners are not natural leaders, that these actions of communicating and guiding folks and supporting folks, this is not a natural habit. In fact, Gallup did an extensive study just last year where they analyzed all the possible traits for the most successful leaders, and they found that in fact only 1 in 10 managers actually possess what they call the high talent to manage. So very few people are actually naturally predisposed to becoming a leader. Doesn't mean that you can't become good at being a business owner or good at becoming a leader. It just means that, again, starting out, very few people are predisposed to it. So this is actually lovely news, in my opinion, because it means that as leaders and as business owners, that to overcome this myth that we don't necessarily know what we're doing is just to embrace the fact that this is hard, and that leadership, in fact, is possibly the most unnatural task and undertaking for us. And then to actually figure out what we can do to improve. That this weird thing called leadership, if we just pick the thing that feels most awkward, whatever that is, we can work and make progress to that. So whether that's if you have difficulty initiating difficult conversations, focusing on that and figuring out how you can bring up those conversations more often. Or for myself, one thing that I tend to do is I tend to not listen to ideas other than my own. I like my own ideas. Okay, that's not good. Yeah, that's not good, right? That's awkward. So focusing on that, realizing that this is hard, not assuming that, just because I have the CEO title that all of a sudden everything, comes naturally and easily. It doesn't. And then letting your team know that this is a work in progress, that you're actively taking steps to become better, that you're actively trying to figure out, hey, I know I kind of like my own ideas a lot, and I have trouble listening to others. I'm working on it. And that if we can do this, we actually give ourselves a little grace and a little space to be good at it and to become the leaders that we've wanted to. So it's not that we don't know what we're doing completely. We do. And there's an opportunity here for growth. So that's what employees tend to think of us as owners. Those are some of the misconceptions that they have, but how about us? We're guilty. We actually tend to think that things are easier for employees. And over the past 4.5 years, there are some pretty big myths that I myself have fallen victim to about what employees are thinking and doing. The biggest myth that owners tend to have of employees is we think they are entitled. I'll never forget one of the first owner camps I ever attended. We were in one of those roundtable discussion groups, and someone raises their hand and she says, "Is anybody else's employees at your company entitled? Because I think mine are." Every time I try to introduce a new initiative, every time I try to do something good, all I get are complaints. It's never good enough. There's always the next thing. It's just like people are just sitting back and waiting. There were a ton of people that raised their hands in agreement with her. So clearly, this feeling is valid. It's there. And many of us in our own companies can probably think of maybe 1 or 2 people that fall in this camp. However, what I would argue, and what the research that we've done in the past 4.5 years would argue, is that they are actually not entitled. And in fact, what employees want is to do more. So across the thousands of employees that we've surveyed over the past few years, we found that over 75% of people said that there's actually something outside their current role that they want to be doing. So if they're an engineer, they actually want to be helping out on customer support. That if they're a designer, they want to be working on marketing. That if they're an accountant, they actually want to be interfacing with clients, right? This is across thousands of employees that we've surveyed. On top of that, these employees, they want to be learning from folks within their company. They want to be going above and beyond the call of duty to apprentice under someone else. 92% of employees want to apprentice under someone else in their company. And not only that, employees actually want to be knowing what they can be doing better, truly knowing what they can be doing better. So 81% of people want more feedback on their performance. And keep in mind, these are employees that are already using Know Your Company, so they're already undergoing some sort of feedback, 81% of them want more and on their performance. So it's not that employees are necessarily entitled. They want to do more. They just might not always express it the right way, might not always know when to express it. And so that's where we come in as leaders and as owners to help direct that. Because what we can do is first take a moment to think about, well, are we truly choosing to listen? So when an employee puts forward a request or they have an idea, what's our immediate reaction? Do we go, oh God, not another one, like I can't have another idea today, right? Do we throw up our hands? Or do we acknowledge that, you know what, I've been really busy lately, and so my initial reaction might be to push back. And to acknowledge the fact that as leaders, we have a bias against new ideas in times of uncertainty. And there are so many studies that back this up, right? That when things are crazy, anything that's seen as creative is just, don't have time for that right now. So do we sometimes look at entitlement as something because it's just not convenient to hear the thing right now? Not only that, if someone does voice something that is a valid concern, but man, they didn't do it the right way, the tone, what exactly they were asking for, right? That's frustrating. That can come across as entitled. Well, again, here's where our role as leaders and owners come in. Because we can coach that employee to be able to voice these requests in a way that's not just about them as an individual. That's when it feels entitled, right? But in the context of the team. So if they want more company benefits, to talk about, well, hey, next time you voice that, what would be helpful to getting that idea across is to actually voice that about how that's going to help the team and why those benefits are helpful for all of us, or most of us, and not just for you. That's something that we can do as owners. Because when we're able to disregard the fact that employees are entitled, if we're able to unhinge ourselves from that mental model, employees can actually step up, right? You can actually help them do the more things that they're wanting to do. So they're not entitled. They want to do more if we're just willing to hear them out. The second biggest myth that we found us as owners falling into the trap of sometimes thinking is, employees, well, Claire, they do not care about the company, though, I'll tell you that. So I met with a business owner a few months ago who told me, hey, Claire, I've had a few employees leaving lately, and it's been the same thing every time. They're just kind of taking the next highest paying thing that comes along. There's no sort of allegiance to doing quality work. They don't get the vision of the company. I've just come to the conclusion that employees, they're just in it for themselves. There's no way they actually care about the company as a whole. It's just the way it is. And I understand. I, took his words to heart, but there's something that this business owner, did not consider, which is, what's the biggest thing that motivates employees to actually do work? Great work. It's making meaningful progress. And as much as maybe his employees, a few of them had left to take a higher paying role, well, did he consider if the work that he had been giving them was meaningful, right? When you reflect on it, it seems so obvious, but all of us have been in jobs where the work wasn't actually interesting, challenging, energizing. Well, that's the reason why people leave. So focus on the fact that this ability to do meaningful work and make progress on it, this is the reason why people do incredible work and do and produce the things that you want. There was a poll that was done in the Wall Street Journal that found that over 75% of employees, in fact, say that they're personally motivated to help a company succeed, and they're willing to put in the extra work to make that happen. So again, employees, they want to care about the company as a whole. The opportunity is there. They're not just looking for the nearest, next biggest paycheck. They want to do work that actually matters. So let's give it to them, right? Let's reflect in all the work that we're giving our employees. How is it actually meaningful? And instead of just, okay, how can we remain competitive with compensation, perks, and benefits. It's more than that. And one of my favorite ways to do this is to ask people, right? Ask them, well, when have you felt motivated? Figure out when those moments are. We often forget to do this as leaders, as owners. We can ask them, hey, when did you last feel proud to be a part of the company? Because when people feel proud, when they feel motivated, you want to recreate those moments as often as possible. So think back to, have you ever asked this question? If so, when's the last time you did? The more you can make sure you're honing in on creating those moments of motivation, of when people feel proud, that's when you know that you're able to have them do that meaningful work, and as a result, get the results that you want. So it's not that they don't care, it's just that we're not always giving them that space and time to tap into it. And then the last biggest myth that we encounter as owners, which is sometimes we think, they just don't know how hard it is, though. Let's be real. And I've thought this myself. I mean, to be frank, if you've never been an owner, how can you know, right? This was challenged, though, for me recently. Last year, I had to let someone go. And for all of us who've gone through that process, it's never fun. It is agonizing. There was the reasons, though, to do it, right? The business reasons, the performance reasons. I knew it was the best thing to do for the business. So I shared the news with the person, and I braced myself, right, for the reaction. There was no way that this person was going to understand, though, right? No way they were going to understand how hard it is to make a decision like this. Well, I was wrong. The reaction from this person was, I'm sad, I'm disappointed, this is tough for me to hear, but I understand. And what that moment showed me is, as tempting as it is to think that our employees don't get how hard this job is, they do have the capacity to actually hear us out. They do have the capacity to know. And what it really relies on is just us telling them. This employee would not have known how hard it was, this decision, if I hadn't shared, hey, here's what's going on with the business. Here's exactly where the expectations fell short. And for us as owners, we have to reconsider how important giving that information is. And that if we're not sharing as much context as possible for why we're making decisions, then people are going to be lost. People aren't going to understand how hard things actually are. And that if we're able to do that, it creates a fuller picture for what's actually going on in the company. And so this means for any decision that you make, there's a whole lot less friction, right? This means that if you decide to shut down an office, if this means that you have to let several people go, all of a sudden people understand how difficult that is, right? Because you're actually letting them know this is something that's hard. So it's not that employees don't get how hard it is. They can. They really can, if we just take a little time to share how hard it is. So those are the biggest myths that we've found that we get tripped up on, whether it's for employees, whether it's for owners. It's the things that I see creeping into so many of the companies that we've worked with over the past few years. And hopefully what I've been able to show is that this mode of thinking, as tempting and sort of easy as it is to fall into, all it does is divide and alienate, because it isn't true. Our employees, they're not entitled. We as owners, we do care about the company, right? Some of you, though, may be thinking, oh, but Claire, no, but I do have an employee who's entitled. Like, yeah, no, but I do. Like all that's great, but you don't understand. I do. That's totally cool. Of course, there are going to be, the bad apples, the folks that sort of disprove that some of these myths are not, in fact, myths. I get that. But what I would encourage all of you to reflect on is that myths are often myths because they're easy. They're convenient. It's easy to say that an employee is entitled instead of thinking, well, why am I resisting hearing what that person actually has to say? Why do they feel so justified in what that need is? It's a lot harder to do that latter part. It's so easy to think, you know what? They just are never going to get how hard it is. It's a lot harder to consider, well, am I sharing that? So for us as leaders, this is an opportunity to take that first step. Of course, the onus is not entirely on us. Of course, employees should step up and try to, vocalize, hey, I don't think you're showing the way you care about the company. Of course, but again, here's an opportunity for us as leaders to take that first step and to start debunking these myths that we have. Because when we're able to do this, when we're able to take down this divide that we have, that it's us against them, that they've got it good, we don't, if we're able to do that, everything in our workplaces get better. It's a whole lot less stressful. Our actual outcomes become better. And to keep in mind that the grass is not always greener at all. So thank you all so much for your time here today. I also highly encourage you in the next few days to think about, of all these myths, which one are you most victim to, right? Which one did you go, oh, but I... Yeah. Oh my God. It almost sounded, it made me think of like the smoke monster in Lost, for any of you who've seen that. I was like, holy shit. Okay, anyway. Next, what I encourage you to do is to not have that noise haunt you in your dreams, but to pick one of these myths that stood out most to you and to really think about what's the easy way to think about this and what's actually maybe the harder and maybe right way to think about this. How can I let go of maybe some of my misconceptions that I have of my employees, and how can I combat the misperceptions they might be having of me? A few other resources too to help you with this. So we have online an incredible resource called the Knowledge Center that you can check out. And if you're trying to think, well, like this is great, but like how do I share some of this with my team? Check this out, read some of the articles, share it with your team. As Carl mentioned, we also have an online community called the Water Cooler that's a great complement to the amazing in-person resources and online resources here. So we have over 500 leaders from all over the world that talk about a lot of these issues. So I encourage you to check that out. I also encourage you that if you're not already a part of the Bureau Online community, to make sure to be a part of that too, because that's a lot of digital agency owners. This is a lot of non-digital agency owners. And then lastly, if you're thinking, well, is there a way maybe I can leverage technology to shake off some of these myths or to make sure that I'm not falling victim to them? Definitely check out our product, Know Your Company. In fact, if you decide to purchase it, we would love to give you a 10% discount just to Owner Summit attendees, so definitely ping me a note if that's something you're interested in. Overall, thank you so much. It's been a blast.